Hello, and thank you for joining us. Today, in an era such as ours, of escalating and intersecting crises, from the ecological to the social, political, and economic, the course that civilization has followed, which has led us to this juncture, is called into question. As Albert Einstein reminds us, a problem cannot be solved with the same kind of thinking that was used to create it. Thus, we need radically new ways of thinking, to formulate new possibilities for humanity, and radical action to make these possibilities a reality, in order to begin moving towards a resolution of the crises of our time. This notion is the theme of a new book entitled Social Ecology and the Right to the City, Towards Ecological and Democratic Cities, co-edited by Federico Venturini, Emet Dermenji, and Ines Morales, published by Black Rose Books. Today, we will be discussing some of these themes with one of the co-editors of the book, Dr. Federico Venturini. Federico is an activist researcher working as an associate researcher at the University of Udine in northeastern Italy. He holds a PhD in geography from the University of Leeds in the UK, and he is a member of the advisory board of the Transnational Institute of Social Ecology. He has also been a longtime friend of and activist for the Kurdish freedom movement, participating as a member of the 2017 International Peace Delegation to Imrali, and co-editing a book entitled Your Freedom and Mine, Abdullah Öcalan and the Kurdish Question in Erdoğan's Turkey. Thank you for joining us, Federico.
Hello, thank you for the invitation.
So I want to ask you first about your involvement in the Kurdish freedom movement. As I mentioned before, you were a member of the International Peace Delegation to Imrali and co-edited a book entitled Your Freedom and Mine, along with Dr. Jeff Miley from the University of Cambridge. I wanted to ask you how you became involved first with the Kurdish freedom movement, and additionally, how your involvement with the movement led to your being a part of creating the book, Your Freedom and Mine, and some thoughts you have about the significance that this book holds.
I think that I've been always interested to liberation struggles, and through the years I always heard about the Kurdish movement, but I was not very aware of the development there. At least till 2011, 2012, when at the time I was at the beginning of my PhD, and I started to discover the links between social ecology and the thinking of Ocalan and what the Kurdish movement was doing on the ground in Turkey and in Syria, in Bakur and in Rojava. So I started to dig a bit more around that period, and then in 2015 I was accepted to give a presentation at the Hamburg conference, talking about the links between social ecology and Ocalan. And
just to clarify, that the Hamburg conference, you mean the Network for an Alternative Quest conference? Is that correct?
Yes, correct. I think is the conference for the Kurdish liberation movement. It is held every 2 years and is very well organized. Is an incredible hub of people and very inspiring. So I strongly recommend, also because this year was meant to have another one, but was postponed due to the COVID pandemic. And I strongly encourage everyone to attend that when it will be possible. Definitely, it's a very nice experience. So from there, I made some connection with the wider movement, and I was invited to be part of the Imrali Peace Delegation 2016. And from then on, I was always involved more and more doing solidarity work around the Imrali Peace Delegation. That meant to be part of these groups of intellectuals, researchers, politicians that went and are still going to Turkey, try to try to foster, try to reinitiate a peace process between the Turkish state and the Kurdish movement. And then the efforts of the delegation was and is also to work in Europe. So to work at Strasbourg, in Brussels, with the Council of Europe, with the European Council, European Parliament, in order to put pressure to Turkey to go back to the negotiating table. So I was definitely involved in this delegation, but then I realized also that to be in solidarity with the Kurdish movement was going beyond participating in a delegation every 3 months or 6 months and so on. So I'm one of that person that likes to speak. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but then I use this. I use this capacity to spread around the information of the situation in Turkey, in the Middle East in general. So I'm taking all the opportunities that I can have, like this interview, or speaking in the schools, at the university, or in other public events, in order to speak about the situation and also about the political project that is developing there, and the ideas that I think that is crucial. And I think that the book, Your Freedom and Mine, is the continuation of the efforts of the delegation. So I and Jeffrey, Miley, and all the other people of the delegation, we thought that we were a good group. We work very well together when we were in Turkey or in Europe, and then we decided maybe it's worth to put on paper what we discovered, our thinking. So I look at the book as another tool of continuing the solidarity work with the Kurdish movement.
And from here, I'd like to ask you about the newest book, Social Ecology and the Right to the City, Towards Ecological and Democratic Cities. Now, this book comes from the contributions of the 2017 Transnational Institute for Social Ecology conference. I'm wondering if you could give us a little bit of background on both the Institute and the conference and how it led to this book being created. And an additional question here, one of the themes that you discuss, or that is discussed in the introduction of the book, is the role of the activist researcher. And so here you quote an Italian author named Antonio Conti, who writes, echoing Marx's 11th thesis on Feuerbach, that the goal of research is not the interpretation of the world, but the organization of transformation. So I would like to ask you how you personally relate to this notion of the activist researcher, and how this principle influences your work, and how you seek to embody this notion in the book.
Okay, I will start first talking a bit the last part about being an activist researcher, and then I will speak a bit more about the genesis and of the book. First of all, I from my experience, at least, I didn't come out from straightforward from the university and then transition to a PhD, and then I discovered social ecology and the Kurdish question, and then I become involved. I have a different, slightly different path. When I was at the university in Italy at the time, I started to be involved in in activism in a social center in my city. First, I was involved with the student movement, and then with broader issues. And then while my studies were progressing, I realized that the university is just a space that is not inherently bad or good, but is a space for thinking. It allows you to have the time and the mental space to think and to be influenced by other people. There are the facilities and so on.
And it has an atmosphere around this as well, an atmosphere of other
Yes,
people thinking,
exactly.
sharing ideas.
Yeah. And then I also realized that what I wanted to do in my life is try to change the society. I mean, I think that we are living in an era where human intervention is so deep that life is threatened on Earth. And then we have deep social rooted problems. So I feel like many other activists or common people, because I think that dividing the notion activists on one side and militants and on the other side people is sometimes misleading.
Absolutely.
But I think that we need to do something to change the situation, the reality. And what is needed is definitely to use hands and to do things, but we also have to think in order to have an informed praxis. And soon I realized that the university can give you the tools, can give you the opportunities to become an activist and at the same time a researcher. You can be an activist researcher also outside the university, that is for sure. But at the same time, if you can manage to have if you can cut a free space at the university, that is a win-win solution. Because you can have the capacity and the time to do what is more important, to change the system. So the book that you were mentioning earlier, Social Ecology and the Right to the City, is one example of this being activist researcher. I'm also a member of TRISE, the Transnational Institute of Social Ecology, and we regularly organize conferences. We held many in Greece, and then at the end of the conference in 2017, we follow some of the same thinking of the other book that I mentioned earlier. We said, okay, we had a very nice conference. It was not just academic, but was oriented towards social movements and activists, and how can social ecology can help to develop effective practice. So we said, okay, we had very interesting conversation. We had nice papers presented. How can we move forward? How can all the material that we produce cannot be wasted? So we decided, okay, let's go for a book.
To interject here, there's just something that stands out to me quickly, if you don't mind, that the way you compared the processes of forming the two books, Your Freedom and Mine, and the newest one, Social Ecology and the Right to the City, it strikes me that the book itself is a part of this process unfolding of people being brought together, thinking, exchanging ideas, and developing things. That the book is not a starting point, but it's part of this process that was already in motion beforehand. I think that's a really important point.
Yeah, definitely. And it means a lot of work.
Mm.
I mean, it's much easier to organize a conference, to have nice people around, to have a panels, to have workshops, and then to hang around and have dinner, and it's nice. But then I think that it's necessary to do an extra step, to crystallize somehow in some form, and to spread the ideas and all the work done beyond just to the participants of the conference or of the delegations of the talks and so on. So the book was not just transcriptions. They were not just a transcription of the conference, but as editor, so with Ahmed and Ines, we had a long work with the authors in order to improve the papers presented and to make connections between the different papers. So I'm quite proud of the book because I think that we're not just the proceeding of a conference, just we take the papers and we collate all together and that's it. But we work on them with the authors in order to make a more coherent publication. And yeah, the book is out more than 1 year, and part of this activist researcher effort, we decided to publish with Creative Commons. That means that we thank you, Black Rose Books, for allow us to do this. It means that we have a printed form and that you can buy at the stores or online and so on. But at the same time, there is also the PDF, and the PDF is free for everyone to read or to use to publish it again everywhere. And I think is very important to have this kind of documents that can be reproduced and can spread easier around online. Now we are thinking to translate the book in Italian, and hopefully next year we will have an Italian version. Finger crossed.
Wonderful. Yeah, it seems it's part of that activist researcher approach, you know, to really practice and try to embody the principles that knowledge belongs to everyone. It belongs to the society, so it must be available. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So two of the main themes of the book are those contained in the title. One, the social ecology, which is a concept or an approach, a paradigm developed by primarily the American sociologist Murray Bookchin, among others, and the notion of the right to the city, which originally developed by the French philosopher and social theorist Henri Lefebvre. And we know that Abdullah Öcalan is influenced by Bookchin's social ecology and his communalism and thinking. And Öcalan writes a lot about the socio-political and ecological problematics of the city, historically analyzing the relationship of the emergence of cities and class societies, as well as in the modern era, the era of mass urbanization, which Öcalan characterizes, among others, as a form of cancerous growth. Your book includes a discussion of the Kurdish movement of Öcalan's paradigm, as well as the struggle to democratize cities in North Kurdistan or in Bakur Kurdistan. In your view, how do the themes of the book and of the conference as well relate to Öcalan's paradigm and the Kurdish movement's democratic confederalism project?
Yeah. So I think that with the book, we meant to explore, first of all, the link of these two paradigm or concepts, social ecology and right to the city. Right to the city is a very well-known word, is a catchphrase somehow. And we felt that it was important to try to explore this from a social ecology perspective and try to show how social ecology can develop the right to the city in a more liberatory way. In doing this, we also realized the links with the Kurdish movement. As we mentioned earlier, Öcalan has been influenced by Bookchin, and at the same time he developed also in a very innovative way social ecology. Absolutely. And he developed a new paradigm, democratic confederalism, that is something very fresh, very new, that is not just on paper, but is realized in Bakur and in Rojava, or the Confederation of Northeast of Syria. So we see that there are links between social ecology, Öcalan, the cities itself, the right to the cities. So we felt that the discussion was very broad and was necessary to make explicit some connection among them. For example, for us, it's very important that between Öcalan and Bookchin, one of the most striking similarity is the connection of freedom and domination. So in both of the authors, there is this analysis of the struggle against domination towards freedom. This is coming up in all the works and all the chapters of the book. And the other concept that is quite relevant and that sometimes is quite neglected is the concept of ecology. And ecology not intended as mere nature, but the interconnection of the various elements of the natural world. But then you can have also ecology inside our society, and you can have an ecology or a way of thinking in ecological way. So making connection in order that a thinking or life or a system can be sustainable, and each part can work all together.
And this speaks to the fundamental premise of social ecology as Bookchin tried to develop it, that society can be viewed as a part of the natural world, and the various interconnections and influences that each has on the other can be looked at as a whole.
Yeah, definitely. And this is something also very similar to Öcalan.
Absolutely.
We are all part of this planet.
The drawing the divisions are part of the problem. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. We are all part of this planet. On one side, there is the first nature, and where we all belong, the natural world, and as animals, also humans are part of this first nature. But then there is also second nature, and only humans belongs to this second nature, because we are the capacity of imagining, of social life in a totally different way from all the other forms of life on our planet. So we have the means to change our planet, and then we should aim to develop a third nature and to achieve freedom for not few of us, but for all society.
And all the whole world to reintegrate second nature again. Yeah.
Exactly. Again, we cannot think that humans are something else with respect to nature. There is not man against nature. That is a dichotomy that has been developed through years, that has been pushed to the limit by capitalism, but is inherently false and is wrong and is leading us to a catastrophe. And through history, we saw that there are examples that there are different development is possible. That means that there is the possibility. Humans have the capacity to live in a different way, in a more cooperative, where money and profit they are not our guiding light, but where we can work all together and develop our capacities. So through history, there is a legacy of freedom, and that we have to develop. We have the capacities and we have the possibilities. This is the struggle, and to again, we cannot see people far away from nature, and we have. If we think that humanity is making so much mess around in society, with poverty, access to water, wars, and so on, we cannot see these problems not linked to a broader picture with the mess that we are making with nature, with climate change. Climate change is only one of the aspects. Then there is microplastic pollution. There is radiation, nuclear power, and so on. So climate change is just one of the problems that we are creating in nature, and so our economic system, our social system is. They are interlinked, and if we want to change them, if we want to solve, we also have to find a different relation to nature that can be sustainable.
And I think it's important that you emphasize men there, because something that Öcalan as well focuses on in a very deep and innovative way is the relationship between society coming to dominate nature and the emergence of patriarchy, or the coming of men to dominate women, the relationship of domestication and exploitation extended across all spheres.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, here we have a difference between Ocalan and Bookchin, but I think at the end it can be solved. For Bookchin, the beginning of domination was the gerontocracy and the beginning of hierarchy in society. For Ocalan, through a different analysis of for history and anthropological works, Ocalan said that the first form of domination was of the man over own women. So women were the first colony.
Absolutely.
I think that this is a difference, is an important difference, but I think also that we should also understand that domination is there. Is at the end of the day is definitely important to acknowledge where is domination. And for Ocalan, what is very incredible is that what is very revolutionary, that he said that women are the first colony coming from a background from Middle East, where the society are very patriarchal. So the message that he is bringing is very revolutionary and very remarkable, that this new thinking is coming from a very patriarchal a male-dominated society.
Absolutely. Well, I would enjoy having a discussion about the difference between Öcalan and Bookchin's understanding of the Neolithic Revolution and subsequent developments, but I'm cognizant that we have only so much time. But before we move on, there's one more topic here I wanted to ask you about, was to link this again, what we've just been talking about, and the approach to begin developing an ecological way of thinking, or a way of thinking towards interconnections with an eye towards third nature, and this notion of the right to the city. So how it is that can manifest in people's movements for democratizing the city, taking back control over land, spaces, creating alternative ways of using spaces and infrastructure.
I think that many times social movements are pushed by single issue, and many times they do not see the interconnection between social aspects and ecological or environmental aspects. So we have campaigns like Save the Forest or Save the Park, and we have Raise the Wages or Fight Corruption or public schools. And then many times there are no interconnection among these. And what social ecology can bring is to show that, okay, we want to raise wages. That is correct, that is important, but why they are so low? Why we have this issue? Because they are part of an economic system that is based on exploitation of workforce and so on. But at the same time, the same economic system is also working on the exploitation on nature. So if we want to have a different economic system, if we want to raise wages, then we have to work also a different way on how economics are run and society. And the same can apply to all the different other issues. And this is also linked to the right to the city. On the same way, cities are increasingly important, not to diminishing the importance of the countryside, but cities are spreading everywhere, and there are very unique dynamics. Is where the majority of the population is living, is where the majority of energy is consumed, where there is the more pollution. So if we want to imagine a different world, we have to deeply change our cities. And right to the city is a tool, but again, linking the access and the enjoying of the facilities, of the opportunities of a city, linked also to development of cities that can be sustainable from an environmental point of view.
Absolutely. So the final topic I wanted to ask you about carries on from this issue you were raising about how many campaigns or movements today are a single issue or active in only one sphere, which there's ecology or police violence, economic inequality, and sometimes they can fail to see the interconnections across issues or concretely make links between these different movements. They remain separated from one another. In our era today, era of globalization, so-called, the global approach has never been more necessary. But as part of the crisis of the left and of social movements, internationalism, the rich history we've had, has declined, except for a few examples here and there of global networks. But I want to ask, well, in your recent work, you've begun exploring this notion of the culture of resistance and how it is that can be developed with an eye towards creating links at global scales between different movements. So I wanted to ask you if you have thoughts stemming from your work and your activism about how these bridges, how these divides can be bridged between different movements or groups active in different spheres, to forge links between them and cultivate an understanding of this interconnectedness of issues, as we've been talking about, resulting in a comprehensive, concrete approach.
Okay. I think that what you have just asked is, I think, is very lying at the core of our efforts. And I think that often we discuss, often is said, think globally and act locally. I think maybe could have been true in the past, but now it shows all the limitation. I think that we have to think and act both locally and globally. Yeah, for sure, it's a lot of work to be done, but to think globally and to act locally and to limit to this, I think there are some issues. For example, we cannot think, we cannot believe that there is a ready recipe for social change that we can have from a thinker or from a movement and apply in the rest of the world. We cannot believe that the ideas of Marx or communism or anarchism can be seen as a recipe that okay, that is ready, that can be true for Italy, like South Africa, or a country in Latin America. And at the same time, we cannot it's not possible to that a revolution is sustainable only in a small or local enclosure. That means
the
that
revolution in one country. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Again, we cannot. But it's not only the revolution in one country, but also in only one. It's not just one campaign in one country, but is, for example, if we are thinking about the environment, we saw that environmental campaigns are much more effective when they started to grow and make links in international level. And the same for all the other campaigns. We can think about the student movements, the peace movement, and so on. So what I'm proposing is this process of building of cultural resistance that you have just mentioned. I think what I'm trying to do is to take the inspiration from the most effective movements in these days, that are the Zapatistas in Chiapas and the Kurdish movement in the Middle East. They were able to take some important ideas from the left, and then they managed to transform them in something that is very effective for their mission, for their communities. We saw for the Zapatistas, we had the intellectuals in the 80s coming from Mexico cities, going to Chiapas in the jungle, and they started to speak with the peasants, with the indigenous people, and the indigenous people and the farmers, they were listening. And after a few days, then they said, okay, we listen to you, intellectual coming from the city, now you have to listen to us. And then they started dialogue. And they developed something that is new Neo-Zapatism. They have their way of organizing their communities. They were of self-defense, and they have their schools. So there is a political, a philosophical process, and then there is also a work on the ground. The same happened with the Kurdish movement. Ocalan, and not only since was captured, but even before, the Kurdish movement took ideas from Marx, from Mao, from the national liberation struggles and so on. They took the ideas and they start to develop their way. First of all, there was the first an important break from conventional thinking was that Kurdistan was an internal colony. That was revolutionary, was very striking at that time. At on the same time, they said we want a Kurdish revolution, but look, there is no workers, there is no proletariat in Kurdistan. But again, they were starting to apply something for their situation. And then in the 90s, in the new century, again, they've been exposed to other thinkers. And for example, we spoke about Bookchin, but then there is also Wallerstein and many others. So they were able to take ideas, to develop their ideas and to change and to apply them. And this is something that we have to do everywhere. It means that we have to develop tools and thinking that can be effective in our communities, in our region, in our country, and we should find a way that we can translate our message of freedom to all society. And maybe the tools for liberation in my country, in my region, are different from maybe the south of Italy or another country. Maybe we have an history that is different. We have a culture that is different, so we can develop something slightly different. We have to have some set of ideas that can be general or universal, like freedom against all forms of domination, the role of women against all form of minority oppression, and so on, solidarity, mutual aid. But then how we can translate them in reality is not so crucial somehow. We have to find our ways, and at the same time to be open to be influenced by others that are doing very cool stuff and then can be helpful. Again, if we want to link to the beginning, the important thing is to change this system. So maybe it's not so important to call it Marxism or anarchism or all the different labels that we really like, but maybe they don't work. And the Zapatistas and the Kurds, they are the most effective, and I think that was a painful process, but they abandoned many labels in order to really change their societies.
Well, a couple of points that stood out in what you said that I think are really foundationally important. This creativity in developing ways of approaching one's own particular context. That it's always that when we look at the movements that you mentioned in particular that are the most successful or that have developed the most at the present moment, the Zapatistas and the Kurds, but historically, whether it be the Russian Revolution or the Maoist Revolution, there's always a context sensitivity. They are looking at where they are, looking at the society, looking at their situation, and thinking up from there, and thinking along with the people. This process of dialogue you mentioned, whether it be with the Zapatistas coming to the peasants, or the Kurds, the early PKK going then over back to Kurdistan, speaking with the people, developing ideas and organization. And this last issue we can close here, I suppose. to bring it back to this issue of developing links between existing movements and struggles or organizations, and developing towards an ecological or interconnected and global way of understanding and moving and acting with creativity, openness, dialogue. Is there anything that you've seen in your approach with different international, transnational movements from your research, where you see promising prospects, or what you think certain approaches can be for people to begin working from their context towards a global approach?
Okay, I think it's a very broad question. It's very hard.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure, I'm definitely positive, even in dark times are like the one that we are living in, of repression. Definitely, there is a wave, a right-wing wave of populist wave all around the world. At the same time, there are also flames and hopes. Definitely, I'm thinking that the environmental movement is very awake, and there is some potentiality that can for further developments. What is lacking again is an ecological thinking in environmental movements. They are looking, yeah, we have to save the tree, or we have to stop climate change. But then the issue is about, okay, but who is doing this? Is the economic system that is creating also the other inequalities. And this is, for example, if you want to think about Fridays for Future, that is one of the most relevant movement in the last years. There was some steps in these directions. Greta Thunberg definitely criticized the current elite, the current economic system. So there is space for hope, but it's also our duty to pass information to new generations and to movements that are maybe single issues, in order to enable them to move forward. I like the word, we have to be catalyst for social change. It's not a way to lead or to initiate, but in order to facilitate. And as an active researcher, I think that I can help, I can be a catalyst. I cannot lead somehow. And then many times we, as activists or militant, we found ourselves trapped in our campaign, in our daily issues. Maybe we have to find some money to the prisoners, or we need to sign some petitions, or we need to do a solidarity demo. And so it's hard for us on one side to think that is what we really need to build a culture of a system. We need to think and to imagine something new. And also is this daily life, this practice is blocking us, is preventing us to forge other links with other movements in other parts of the world. So sometimes we feel somehow trapped in our small community, in our small world. But then again, we are everywhere. There are people everywhere that want to change the world. And again, it requires a lot of work and effort and time. But to make connections and to maintain them alive is effective, and is also very refreshing for our efforts.
Unfortunately, we run out of time, but thank you so much for speaking with us, Federico.
Thank you. It's been a Pleasure. Thank you, Connor.
Pleasure is all mine. We appreciate everything you said very much, and we share your hopes and sentiments. Thank you.